The first fight, okay, scene, space, Providence, the people, CVA, the time, somewhere in the distant future, location not disclosed, but we get the feeling that the pilot is not too far from home. So we open acoustic performances of metal songs echo in the background. Write that in. It's very important that we get a little bit of echo in there, okay? The scene is set. Fade in from black, okay? And we come in now to what appears to be a chaotic scene. We've got a heretic, okay, a heretic and a vexer landing on a gate just behind our hero. But is he the hero? We don't know. We don't know. We can't be sure. But we do know is that a heretic and a vexer landing on the gate behind him. He is alone here. Okay, there's no purple icons anyway, just this guy. Okay, so he jumps the gate. He jumps the gate. We're gonna play that out. We're gonna let the scene speak for itself on that one. Really strong performances from the guy who played Vexer in that scene. Really emotional. And then we're gonna cut that at the death of the hawk and the warping out. Okay. Well, we don't have to wait for that. I mean, we can leave this as a cliffhanger, really. And you, as the artistic director / stagehand, that's going to be to your discretion. But keep in mind, this is prepping for potential commentary when we go back and do the collector's edition of the DVD. So we want to keep that. Want to keep it tight. You know what I mean? All right. So we've cut that. That's scene 1. Okay. Fiend. Alright, then we move on. We don't know how much time has passed, but again, we feel the pilot's very close to home, and we notice, okay, the backdrop in this scene is the same space, and what's happened in the life of the main character between the first fight and the second, we don't know. We don't really know. But we can guess, So we fade in again now, and here he is, again, in a Brutix. Same Brutix? We're not sure, but we think so. We think so. I want the fade in. I want the pace of the fade in to suggest that we're returning to that same place that we were before. And he's now seated 70 kilometers off a gate. Okay, with the rupture on that gate. Who's the rupture? We don't know. We don't know. And sometimes we're afraid to ask because he could leave at any moment. He's standing by the door. Do we want to invest in this character that could so quickly and effortlessly part from the scene? I don't think so. I think we're going to remain apprehensive. But what's this? We zoom in on that rupture, and suddenly, we've got the audience's attention. Okay, so now we're invested in this rupture. And who is he? What does he do? Does he have a family? We don't know. And we remain in this tense, static sort of scene in that is the lack of motion what we're not doing, or is the lack of motion exactly what we're doing? And there's some fairly simplistic camera work done in there. I don't think we need to really tidy that up in post-production. I think that's good as is. We want to give it some grit, this scene, so I like that, the panning in and out there. So then the action starts, right? Suddenly all of this tension builds and it builds and it builds into, prop mod being activated and the rupture's coming toward us now. Are we afraid? Or, are we greeting the rupture with open arms? Again, we don't know. And what we really have to ask is, does he know? Does the actor that plays Brutix, is he aware? And has he made his mind up yet, or is he as conflicted as the audience? We don't know. Are you writing all that? I'm going to ask you to read this back to me. Make sure you're getting all this. The rupture, okay, comes toward us, and we can, we as the audience can feel our heartbeats rising, okay, but we don't know yet. Is it the excitement of seeing an old friend, or is it the baser instincts, the survival, is that what's coming through? Where's this adrenaline? What headspace are we in? Where this adrenaline's coming from? And and right as we just start to put the words to these questions, and really start to flesh it out, it's too late. Okay, the question has been answered for us. The resolution hits at the exact moment that we take a moment to pause and ask ourselves. Okay, so suddenly there's this engagement. Shots fired, the sound of explosions, which we'll want to put those in post production, but. People screaming, lives lost, but we don't have time to think about that. Okay, that's collateral damage, and we don't think about it. We don't. Until now, when you think about the footage, that's not important. Those men, they signed up to serve. Okay, so we can't think about them, and there starts to be panic setting in. Right, there's some overheating going on. We haven't determined the tank. We haven't seen the hardeners. We just so many questions, and the answers all come so fast. But what do we see on the horizon on the D-scan? Side fleet issue. And then again, all these same questions come in. Can we trust our effort and attention to this new character who just shows up? Is it a plot point? Or is it just a passerby, who adds texture to the scene? We don't know, and until he lands, But again, it's very important here the timing of these events. By then, this first character we've come to know, and some of us love, some of us hate. He's gone, we've killed him. It's done, but we didn't even notice because, this passerby in the background who. We don't understand yet, but then as soon as the one that we've put our hearts behind has died, another lands. It's a game, it's so here we are, heartbroken. Are we thrilled? It's really, is survival paramount here, or do we care about the greater part that Brutix has to play in the scene? And so all of these things whirring through our head, and then there comes the scythe. The scythe fleet issue lands on grid, and right then Brutix, he leaves. He doesn't take time to ask any questions of that character. He goes as if scythe fleet issue has not even entered the room. And again, just all of these open-ended questions. Did he know he was coming? Did he leave to avoid him? Is there some history there? Is this protecting himself, hiding his shame? Is it the shadows, or is it the lighting that makes the scene in a certain sense? And it's very, it's a little bit art house, but I think more grounded in the realism that we came to know in the scene prior, But this scene with suspense, this scene with some real gusto. So we fade out there. It's important that we see that character enter the scene, and then his rejection of that character, be it deliberate or as a natural consequence of what he had just done to another character in the scene. We don't really ask that. It's just important that we capture that open-ended question, and we're going to fade the black there. Fade the black there. Okay. So mark right there. We'll do the third one, and then I'll have your review. Okay. So all this is, we have 4 scenes actually. Jesus, this is quite the project. So then we move on. Okay. We haven't even had time to compose ourselves. Did we lose a friend, or did we just do the world a favor? And I'm not sure we want to know at this point, because either way we're burdened with this sort of terrible guilt that we judge the characters so quickly without knowing the answer, that we could be so invigorated by something that we didn't understand the consequence of. And that's a dangerous notion, but here we are, in the middle of these ponderings, and we come back again. We fade in from black, and we fade in at a certain point where the gentle flamenco of the previous scenes has now taken on a slightly different tone, and we've landed again in what seems to be a very tense situation, and it just, the pangs of pain from the same scene with the rupture earlier, they just come shooting back instantaneously. I mean, it's very deja vu with, slightly different texture. We're gonna different nebulas in the backdrop, right? That's really important for us in terms of defining this scene as not maybe a nightmarish interpretation of the previous, where the ship has gotten bigger and the stakes higher. That's what we don't want to kind of invoke those emotions. We want to define this while still recognizing it as being in the same pattern of behaviors that we've seen from Brutix in the previous two scenes, which were really important in defining the character, I feel like, throughout the rest of the film. So we've done that now. And we get to a point where we can't invest. We can't invest in the other character in the scene. We refuse to. He is as the other characters were. I mean, they exist in this space, and without a whole lot of dynamicism going on at the beginning of the scene. I mean, it's almost a static scene, and so we've trained ourselves from the previous two to think that this character is about to suffer from the same fate, and so we will not let ourselves anchor on that character. We will not invest emotionally or intellectually in that character. But we know somehow he's going to play a part in the scene. We're trained, to understand that now all of these characters play a part. Okay, and this is about to bite us in the ass. This is what's good. Okay, so here Gnosis is on the gate as just possibly an innocent bystander, but had it not been for the two scenes before, we might have accepted that as the most likely scenario. He jumps the gate. We see a couple of small exchanges in contextual menus which kind of imply like something different is happening here, okay? Something bigger is now at play, because we're not asking anymore. We're seeing intent for the first time out of Brutix, okay? And you sort of, now there's this personification, and there's this very urgent search for empathy with Brutix, to have retrospective element toward the previous two scenes, because that changes entirely the texture of the previous two scenes. And the question is, like, is it enough now? Are we grasping at straws, or can we justify what's being done, or what's been done in the past, by sort of empathy in the present? And so we're delving into that. We're seeing a dual invite sent out. Is it a tease? Is it an inside joke? Is it we don't really know, but at the very least we're seeing some expression of intent, some interaction coming out of him finally, as opposed to just sort of the cold-blooded killing we've seen in the previous two scenes. Now, at this point, things really get interesting, because here the audience thinks, okay, now we've reached the fulcrum of this scene, where it's either, the intent is going to go this way or the other, and finally we'll have some idea what Brutix is doing here, why he's here, and, why is he doing this? And they think we're there, but then enter, for the first time throughout the entire piece, an identifiable friend of Brutix, okay? Now, and it's not even questionable, okay? This is one of the few things that's drawn with very solid lines for the past three scenes. We've been lied to, we've been cheated, we've been confused, we've been our emotions just torn one way or the other, and finally, despite the fact that we don't know Brutix, and we don't know his intent, we don't know, the situation, but somehow we're just innately comforted by finding that there is someone associated with him, that there is another like Brutix. Even if his intents are different, we don't care. We're just the immediate feeling of reinforcement for him is just vicariously, we feel comforted by that. And that's a big point in the scene. And then we get some dialogue, okay? And then we'll talk about how we're going to cut that dialogue later, but we get some dialogue coming out, which is very amicable. It kind of paints this picture that a lot of us were yearning for from Brutix at the start of the scene during the build-up. And so we start to develop. We in a matter of seconds, just by way of his demeanor, we start to identify with Brutix, and we start to sort of piece together in hindsight, that we approve of his actions. And it's just a very quick sort of snap judgment. It's not that we presume to understand everything that happened in the previous scenes. It's just important now that we feel attached to Brutix in a positive sense, and it takes some of the ambiguity out of his character, even though really, we could be cheering on the wrong team here, but we're so torn apart by the time that we reach this, that we're just looking for the familiar, and we're trying to, and we will at that point accept that as the right, the good, so to speak, because it is familiar, and we've heard nothing from the other character in the scene, Gnosis, who is still sitting there. A little bit of dancing goes on in entering room, exiting room, but ultimately, Gnosis is still a big part of it. And then, again, just as spontaneously as if we'd seen in the past, we now see the two friendly characters colluding against Gnosis, not conspiring in a sense, because there's no real tension to the scene. There's only surprise. So the two characters have cooperated in a sense to put Gnosis in a dangerous position. Once he's in that position, we see that violence come again, and now we've called into question sort of that level of comfort that we've just allowed ourselves to find in Brutix, and so we've got all that going on. But another character enters the scene, presumably a friend of Gnosis, and the fight is brutal, and it's very much a bar brawl sort of situation, and as quickly as the friend has entered, the friend has now died, but we don't have time to think about that in the midst of all the fighting, and then suddenly Brutix is left in a very delicate situation, and he's in serious peril, and again, that sort of preemptive agreeance with Brutix that the audience has, this sort of likable nature that we've assigned to him with very little evidence. We're nervous, we're afraid for him, and we'll let that scene play out. I don't want to, but I just think it's important when we go back to frame this that we remember sort of where we were with the scene. And so we fear for Brutix, but Brutix does survive, thanks to some heroic actions by the other characters entered the scene. And then again, we just leave so shooken up. We really struggle to assign blame. These feelings of guilt that have built up throughout the several scuffles that have happened in the previous scenes. We don't know, but we have this need to assign blame to somebody, and we have this guilt that we have to put somewhere, and we're not sure where yet. And so, I feel like a lot of us might put it on Brutix, and that's why I think it's very important that we capture the borderline maniacal laughter. It's very subtle. It seems like it's just a casual chuckle, but given the context of what's just happened, I think it's deeply disturbing. I think it's a really important part in calling Brutix's character into question again. So I think it's very important we get that in that cut, and that we also get Brutix leaving the scene of this horrible fight and essentially double homicide. So we just need to get him exiting that, and then I think beyond that we've established everything we need to about the character. That's the end of scene 3. We can fade to black there. As far as the music, I'll leave that in your more than capable hands. Scene 4. At this point, we're gonna kind of branch out. We're not going to like a multi-directorial sort of method here, but what I want to do is I want to see, as part of the way to interpret the piece moving forward, I'd like to see your cut of that scene based purely on your own experience as an audience member leading into that scene. I want to know, based on your positions toward Brutix and his actions by this point in the film, I want to know how you would cut that scene. Because I think how I would cut the scene might be different, and I think that disparity is going to give us something really interesting to sort of create tension by meeting somewhere in the middle and leaving all involved parties sort of torn, if that makes sense.